Hi, this is Kingston Town Administrator Keith Hickey with a new TV show called Kingston In Depth. It's a show that we tape on a monthly basis where I have the opportunity to spend a little bit more time with a guest and discuss ongoing issues in Kingston. As most of you probably are aware, Kingston Town Meeting is coming up on May 14th at the Kingston Intermediate School. We have a number of things on the town warrant for voter consideration. One of the items that seems to have drawn a bit of interest this year is the replacement of the Grays Beach Playground. So with me today is Parks and Recreation Director Susan Woodworth. Susan's been our Parks and Recreation Director, in Kingston now for quite a few years. Has done a tremendous job, and Susan, thank you for this coming on this inaugural show. It'll be tough to beat after this.
Thanks for inviting me.
So we want to talk a little bit more about the Kingston Playground and why it's important, why it's on the agenda in the warrant for town meeting, why it costs as much as it's being proposed to be why it's costing as much as it's proposed. And what happens if it doesn't get funded and whatnot. So with that, maybe you can just give us a summary of what's in place there now, how long it's been there, and what some of the issues have been with that playground.
Sure. So the playground was built in 2004, and it was actually a community build. They don't do those as much anymore, but we had a great number of residents who used to come to a playgroup program that we ran at the rec department. And so it was really a bunch of our community families that got together, raised all the money at that particular point in time, and then they also helped with the install on that. So again, that was in 2004, and so we're just about 18 years into that playground. Over the years, we continually do maintenance every single year, annual maintenance. We've had some odd inspections, low-frequency inspections as well. And it's just, over the years, we've had to replace a few components, more so in the last few years. Two large ticket items. One was a slide, which is very expensive to replace. There's a lot of different components that go along with that. And then one was a boardwalk walkway area. And also, unfortunately, since then, we've had to remove some of the current equipment due to the same thing, some of the safety concerns, and it's just really at a point where it's time to look at it from a bigger perspective than just kind of piecemealing different parts together.
So typically a playground like this, its useful life is how long?
I think most vendors would say, manufacturers, between 15 to 20 years. So, I mean, and there's no guarantee, just like when you buy any other kind of piece of equipment. But I think the average, depending on the use of the equipment, this is a heavily used playground. A lot of communities, not just Kingston, come to this park. So it really provides the opportunity for so many different families. So I think that we're definitely, reaching that mark where we're in 18 years.
Sure. So we have some slides that we can show up on the screen when you have an opportunity that talks about or actually provides some visible issues with the erosion, the rust, and things of that nature. So if we could put that up on the screen at some point, just to give people an example of some of the challenges that we're facing at the playground, we'll work our way through that just to make sure people are aware of what's going on. So basically, it's really served us. It's right at the middle of its useful life. So at 18 years,
right.
It's really starts to. We should be considering replacing it. As you mentioned, there's a number of components that have already been eliminated, removed, and there may be other components of the playground that are there now that may need to be either repaired or removed or replaced if it doesn't get funded at town meeting. So we have a slide here that gives you an overview of what the playground would be designed like. Maybe you can talk about what the playground design would be like and how the playground that was chosen was determined, if you don't mind.
Sure. And if I can just backtrack just a minute, just for the audit purposes on why we need to replace it, going back to that, well, like, as I mentioned, we do these low-frequency inspections, and then we did an audit which is much more in detail. It doesn't just take the equipment, it looks at the whole site as a whole, the surface of the area, the location of the playground, and different things to see what we did as a community when we built it and the things that we've done along the way. So that particular audit, we've known over the last few years that it's ending the, its kind of use, but this particular audit really indicated that it is time to do that. So what we did after that in October is apply for some community preservation funds. And then in the interim, we started working with a vendor that works with many vendors, not just one playground manufacturer, and asked them what they're seeing in these days, looking at different components, different ways to install or design a playground. So we had two options that were kind of given to us. One was the standard, which was what we have now, which is kind of like they call it a post and deck system. A lot more parts, a lot more components, rusting opportunities there with a lot of nuts and bolts, and then you've got the structures that are metal, so things like that. So we did have one design for that, and then this other design that you'll see here up on the screen is more of what they're calling kind of a universal design, and it's a little bit of an open format. So a lot of those post and deck, you've got smaller components. It's challenging sometimes for parents or grandparents to get up and stick around with the kids. It's also challenging for some people that aren't as able-bodied as others. So it provided more opportunity, this universal design, to bring more people to the park and the playground and have accessibility. So you can see from the design, there's a couple of things. In the blue, that's what they call poured-in-place rubber material. So it provides an opportunity for more accessibility, some ADA accessibility. Children in wheelchairs, even strollers, grandparents may be using walkers, lots of different opportunities for people to get in and about and still be engaged. So, in the past, if you had a grandparent maybe using a walker, they might not have been able to participate. Now with this open floor plan of this particular, you'll see other pictures coming up, but it provides that opportunity, and it provides an opportunity for families with different age groups. So if you've got somebody that's 3 years old and then maybe somebody that's 5 or 7, it provides them an opportunity to play together a little bit more, whereas before, one parent was in one direction and one parent was in another direction. So this makes it a little bit easier with this design. The other components that we've added to this, you can't really see it, but we'll move on. But you can see we have a new component with kind of a musical component. So again, you have a component for children that may have different needs. They might not like playing, maybe amongst other people, but there's a design to have these musical components added onto it. There's also a component on this particular screen where there's a rock that some kids with sensory issues, that they can climb underneath and take a break, so that they have an opportunity to kind of be in a different space if they need to. The open format, again, just provides parents that opportunity to see their kids a little bit better. And so it's more of like a family unit where a lot of kids can play together. And sometimes those older kids are great with the younger kids. They can be a little bit of a mentor, and then those younger kids can do that. So we did have a couple of open meetings through the Recreation Commission where we invited the public to come and look at these two different designs, and the overwhelming response was for this universal design, not only from the parents but also the kids. We have a couple of programs that we ran during that time, and we brought the designs down to the kids, because who better than to tell us what they want to play on is the kids. All different age groups, and they overwhelmingly loved this ship design and this theme for that particular location. So that was the direction we decided to head in.
So you mentioned that the flooring in the bluish color on the design on the screen is kind of a rubbery cement type material that allows anybody to walk on it, whether they can walk themselves or they need assistance in doing that. What is the ground going to be covered with that is reflected in the tan area on the screen?
Sure, so that would be this typical playground surface mulch. There's a specific playground mulch that you have to use in playgrounds. So just because the cost of that, obviously, for the community, we're trying to be cognizant of the cost. To put the whole entire place in the poured-in-place rubber material would be astronomically expensive. So we really kind of cut back, looked at the design to see what elements could we have it geared towards, and so that's why it was set that way. And then the remainder is in the regular mulch that you'll see in some other playgrounds today.
Sure. So you can see there's a couple of different shots of what this is going to look like and how it's going to be placed. It'll be at the same playground area that is there now. It will be replacing and repairing drainage, addressing the decking, and then taking out all the old playground material and putting in this new playground material that's depicted in some of the slides that you're able to see.
Right, and the one that you had just shown previously, the great thing about that is you can see how big it is. I mean, sometimes you can't really get a visual on that, but you can see that the scope of that ship that's designed, it's pretty large. And then there's a whole bunch of netting systems, different abilities to climb on. So that's a large component. I think some of the misconception is this is going to be the small ship with all this open area. And the other thing about the grate that doesn't include on that one that you can't see is we also have to take into consideration seating. So we've got some benches that we'll continue to install that are already there that will reuse those, and picnic tables. So we need to have some space for those kind of components as well.
So let's talk about, again, here's some different views that show the different components and whatnot, and it's going to be 15 to 20 feet long.
Right.
So again, we talked a little bit already about why this design versus the type of design that you have there now.
Sure.
The useful life of the design you're looking at is still between 15 and 20 years, so it doesn't increase or decrease that useful life. Because there are fewer moving parts, ideally there might be less maintenance that needs to occur, and less of a chance for the playground or pieces of the playground to start to fail, like we've had with the existing, correct?
Correct.
And again, I think more important, as important as anything else, besides the kids loving the idea and the design of the playground, is the ability to allow people of all ages to go in and enjoy their grandchildren, great-grandchildren, kids, nephews, friends, whatever, where they can't right now, typically because of the mulchy type surface. It's difficult for somebody who has a walker or is in a wheelchair or even just using a cane.
Correct.
To really, in some cases, safely walk through that and not be concerned about slipping or falling.
Right, and I think that was the other component that's really important when we look at this design, the poured in place, but the material itself for the equipment, it's a newer material, not new, but maybe a little bit newer to this area. It's glass fiber reinforced concrete, so you have the big structures that are actually made somewhere else, and then they're housed in, they're on concrete pads. So back to your point, definitely less maintenance for, there's not as much of the nuts and bolts kind of things on that, so that is a little bit less, and it's less costly to install. The equipment itself may be a little bit more expensive, but it's also, again, you don't have all those components to do the installation and things like that. And then to your point about the ability to have people come in, I think that was the biggest thing too with this design, is just really this universal design approach. You know, we talk about ADA, but it also will provide an opportunity for us to possibly get some grant options. So we can talk about the funding in a minute, but it was a lot of different reasons why we decided to go with this design.
Great. So again, you've had public meetings with the Recreation Commission. You've had and presented these to a variety of different groups and had some mostly positive comments about moving in this direction, so that's great. It has been kind of we've asked the right people why they want, what they're looking for, and this is what the kids and some of the people who've been to the seminars and meetings have said, so that's what is moving forward. So obviously cost is, I think, a big driver of why we're having the conversations we're having about this, and we'll see on the screen now the funding request for the Community Preservation Fund was $563,160. That would construct the playground as it was depicted in the previous screenshots that we had in the presentation. If we had stayed with the same type of materials that are used in there now, was there a significant change or difference in price?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's definitely, I think it was a little bit less if we didn't go with the poured in place material, because that is such an expensive. But going back to that is one of the opportunities, if we change some of the design components to meet some of the needs for the ADA requirements and things of that, it also provides us the opportunity to look outside this funding source for other grant opportunities that the state might have. So there are municipal grants that they don't fall within the town meeting timeline, which is unfortunate, but there could be an opportunity that I can write a grant come in October with ADA situations. So then that will provide us more funding opportunity and maybe be able to give some of this money back to our community. But so the overall cost could be a little bit more with this new design because of this poured in place material, but it's what we should be doing for our community. It's where we should be heading, and it's basically with some of the ADA things, it's where we need to be.
So if they can put on the screen, if they wouldn't mind, just the breakdown of the $563,000 funding request. It covers a number of items. Obviously, the installation of the new equipment. There's a small fee to remove all the old stuff. One of the things I think it's important for people to recognize, if they aren't users of the Grays Beach Playground on a regular basis, is if you happen to get on there to use the playground after some rain, there's puddling, there's a variety of things that are really starting to fail on the site itself, and part of the cost that we're proposing is $64,000 in site work, which will address the drainage issues and the puddling that occurs and things of that nature. So when you do go down there after a rainstorm, there might be puddles on the equipment and things of that nature, but you're not going to have puddles that were certainly something they're going to get your feet awfully wet if you walk through them after a rainstorm. Yeah, and you sank, and it was just the material there. Well, it's certainly served its purpose. It's not nearly as effective as the new material that we placed around the area. So not only are we replacing the equipment, we're also upgrading the inside of the playground area, so it's a little bit safer. We don't have as many puddles, and the maintenance won't be nearly as significant. And again, because there's an unknown, we have $94,000 in contingency, and that may not be needed completely as well. So the 563 is a worst case scenario, I guess, and while we probably expect to spend most of that, there may be some turn back to the CPC. So again, it's expensive, there's no question about it, but this is my understanding from some of your discussions at the Capital Planning Committee and at the Board of Selectmen. This project cost is very similar to other projects in the area, in other communities on the South Shore that have had playgrounds installed using the same types of materials. So the $563,000, while it is very expensive, it's unfortunately the cost of putting a playground in at this point, and dealing with all the issues that come with making sure the playground's safe.
Right, we did do some research, so going back to the current replacement costs that you see up there on the screen, as Keith mentioned, it definitely, it's a big number, but the thing to consider, I think people are saying, oh, that's expensive for a playground, but back to your point, there's so many components of it. That's not the playground equipment cost, that's really that breakdown of that $395. And then the other piece is the site work is really important that right now, again, after 18 years of use, you've got the compaction of that mulch that's there, and there is an area right across the middle that creates that kind of quicksand approach, if you think, with regard to that. So it definitely is something that needs to get done. With regard to that, we've already had to cut off some of the areas because we have roots showing up now that have been there for all those times. And then, you go do a comparison, and that was one of the things too, just so we could show the community. When we do this community preservation committee application, there's a lot of components that go back to it, going back to the public. We received many letters as part of that application, so from our community. But why is it so expensive? I mean, there's a lot of things. Unfortunately, we have prevailing wages in the state of Massachusetts, which increases the cost of many things. We have labor shortages due to COVID and things of that nature that are just out of our control, obviously. And then you can kind of look at some of the other communities that have recently, in the last, even unfortunately, about 2 years ago, so those numbers, if you do the inflation, I'm sure would be up higher, closer to where we're at, but we're right around the mark that things were happening 2 years ago. So I think overall we're doing pretty well with the cost and the price of it. So what are the other things too, if we could talk a little bit about other funding sources, because just so the community doesn't think, oh, we're just want to come and ask for this money. As you mentioned, our job is really to look out there to see what we can do for our community, see what the community needs, and bring these things forward and bring different people in. So we are looking at other funding opportunities. We've run some fundraisers and different things of that nature. There's some sponsorship opportunities. We've raised just about $8,000 so far in that. We're working with the state to get some money from the state budget, hopefully, as well. And then there are 2 grants that we're looking at, the ADA one I mentioned, and there's another grant that's a federal grant called the Park Grant. And again, unfortunately, town meeting happens prior to these being available to us. I'm taking a workshop tomorrow on the park grant, so I'll have more information for that, hopefully at town meeting, and then we'll apply for that sometime in July. And then we'll have that, see how that all works out. But again, if we can get these extra resources,
Sure.
it gives us that opportunity to return the money back to town to, use for other projects.
And the money is, the $563,000 primarily is being funded through the community preservation funds. So it does cost every taxpayer some money. There's a percentage of your tax bill that funds the community preservation funding sources that are there, and what you've done, I think, has gone to your Parks and Rec Commission, made them aware of the concern. They supported replacing the playground. You then applied in a competitive manner to the Community Preservation Committee, and they vetted your application with all the others and voted to support this as well. So we aren't raising and appropriating this money. This money is coming from grant funds, whether the playground is approved or not. It's not going to increase or impact anybody's property taxes one way or another at town meeting. So it's a project that has been vetted by all the different organizations that need to vet it. They all support it. Ultimately, the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee voted to support the project as well. So when you look at the warrant, and if you attend town meeting, the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, the majority of them voted yes. So we're getting near the end of the show. Just to try to wrap things up, what happens if this project does not get funded?
So
and again, I want to preface this by saying this isn't if you don't do this, we're going to do that type thing. I think it's important for people to recognize that we've had an audit done by a professional who does this, who has identified some items that are easy to fix and some items that will require us to remove portions of the playground equipment that are there now. And we aren't trying to scare anybody by having this brief conversation at the end of this, but I think we're just trying to be honest with anybody who's watching about what could happen if the funding isn't approved. So maybe with that preface, you can talk a little about that.
Sure, and just to go back to your point too, as far as the votes, Capital Planning Committee voted favorable action, Community Preservation, obviously Board of Selectmen, and I believe the Finance Committee did not at this particular point in time. However, they
That's right.
are revisiting that. So there's been some additional conversations, so there may be opportunity for conversation at town meeting. But what happens if we don't fund the project, like you said, not to scare anybody, but the reality is that I would then go back to the certified playground safety inspector that we worked with and ask them to do another audit or a low frequency inspection and let us know where we stand as of that moment with the playground and what our next steps can be. And if it comes to the point that we are recommended to shut the playground down, then that is our job. That's my job, to make sure that we follow the lead of these experts and for our community. That's why we are hired, is to do these things. So, that's where it's not an automatic, but it's definitely something that can definitely happen fairly quickly too, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, to just maybe expand upon that a little bit, I mean, we have an expert's opinion about certain things, and I think it's our responsibility to follow those. And God forbid if somebody were to get hurt and we didn't address a shortcoming on the audit, and somebody was hurt, at least in my mind, unfortunately, being as litigious as life is at this point, there could be some litigation filed against the town, and the $563,000 could be a drop in the bucket compared to what they were able to win. So, anything else in wrapping up the playground, Sue, that you wanted to just talk about? Or?
No, just I think what you just said. I think more importantly, even with that in mind, it's the right thing to do for our community. That again, that's what we're hired for, is to look at this, and decisions are not made in a vacuum. We look at all the different things, and you prioritize. And if it might have not been on the information last year, obviously things change and shift, and so you never know. And it's kind of like when you have your own home and you want to build a pool, and then all of a sudden your roof starts to fall apart. You kind of look at, okay, maybe I need to fix the roof. So that's kind of how this shifted, and it's important for us to take a look at this for our community. So
one other comment real quick that I've heard anyways is, well, geez, last year Community Preservation approved a volleyball court, and now that's not happening. Maybe you can talk very briefly about what happened to that.
Absolutely, I would love to, because one of the things is, again, we put that volleyball court forth because some community members were interested in that. And again, we don't make decisions in a vacuum, and so we did that on behalf of the community, and it was funded through town meeting. We hadn't been able to start the construction of that, and then when this audit came through and we started looking at this for this year, it was actually a thoughtful decision to say, well, those funds haven't been utilized yet. This is a lot of money we're asking of the town. So maybe we can request to have that money given back so that that money can be used for this project. And that doesn't mean the volleyball court's off the table. It means we might just wait. Again, kind of going back to that scenario of the pool and the roof.
Sure.
You have to pick where you want to do things. So again, it was a very thoughtful decision about why we would suggest doing that. And we did look at how that could happen, and we were told that, we can just request to have those funds and then maybe have those funds reallocated at a later time.
Sure. So while you're on this well-watched TV show, is there anything else you want to talk about as far as recreation things go before we finish up?
Sure. So just we've been talking a lot about Grays Beach Park. So one of the things with the work that we did a few years back there, we're able to have such great community events there. So we've got a lot of things happening this summer. You can check it out at kingstonrec.com and also through the Kingston website of kingstonma.gov. But we're doing music nights on Tuesdays, actually starting this month, and movie nights. We started farmers markets, which will be the first Sunday of the month. And we have other programming down there, yoga and pickleball, so a lot of the great things happening for our community. And then we'll be doing a fall fest, which will be a larger one with a bunch of music. So you can come on down anytime, and our summer program registration is open. There are a lot of great summer programs happening right now. So
and if anybody's interested, they have a child who's looking for a summer job, I know you guys are looking for a variety of different positions at this point.
Waterfront and lifeguard directors are open. Our counselor positions, fortunately, are filled at this point, so that's exciting. But we have not received any applications. I know there's a shortage across the country, unfortunately, but we are still looking for a waterfront director and lifeguards.
Okay. So I just want to take a second and just thank everybody very much for watching. Hopefully you found the information that Susan was able to provide today to be helpful and get you prepared for how you're going to vote at town meeting. Just a reminder, everybody, is that town meeting is going to be held on Saturday, May 14th. It starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. It is at the Kingston Elementary School this year. So we're Kingston Intermediate School. That's why Sue's here. So we're out of the mall finally. If you haven't been there, it's at 65 2nd Brook Street. It'll be in the auditorium. It'll be much more comfortable. You'll be able to hear a lot better than you have been at the mall. So the playground topic is one of many that will be discussed and debated, I'm sure. I hope you guys can take a few minutes and stop by on the 14th and make your feelings known about the variety of funding requests that are being made. So with that, I want to thank everybody for watching. We'll do this again in a month with another guest. Hope you have a great day. Thanks very much.